Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Renewed Youth Students YouTube channel. Here we are going to continue on with what is the story of Esther. And what I would like to mention to you is what happened last time, or what we talked about last time. That is that Mordecai, who is the cousin of Esther and the one who took care of Esther when her parents weren't there, and Mordecai had saved the life of the king by what is reporting about this plot to kill him. And after that happened, we found ourselves with a new character, which was Haman. Haman was someone who was the right hand of the king, and after Mordecai did not bow down to Haman, Haman decided he wanted Mordecai and all of the Jews to die in the kingdom. So he came up with this plot in which the king then, hearing out what Mordecai had to say, allowed for this death sentence to be placed upon all Jews across the whole kingdom. And this was going to take time before it would happen, but essentially anyone who wanted to kill the Jews could do it at a certain date and time. So now we're going to talk about how Mordecai reacts to this.
So today we're going to be talking about Esther chapter 4 and a little bit of chapter 5. So if you want to read along with us, you can. So like Marcus said, as Haman wanted all the Jews dead, he got the king to sign a decree. And last time we had talked about how when the king signs a decree, that nobody could reject it, not even the king. You can't just be like, oh, never mind, just kidding, I didn't actually mean that. So whatever the king writes actually is going to happen. And so Mordecai had heard about this because it had thrown the kingdom into confusion, and everybody was like, well, what's going on? We're just going to kill all the Jews. And so obviously Mordecai had heard about this because they print out all the decrees and send them across the lands and read them and post them for everybody to know what's going on in the kingdom. So Mordecai heard about this, and kind of like last time where he heard about somebody wanting to kill the king, he went to the palace gate and he was just distraught. And so Esther had people go and sent people to go and talk to him because he was just so distraught, and had her get the story out because Mordecai was like ripping his clothes, he was weeping, and he was just inconsolable. And so eventually Mordecai got the story to Esther that the king had signed this decree and that everybody that was a Jew was going to die. And so she was pretty deeply disturbed by this and was kind of like, well, what do you want me to do? And Mordecai's like, you need to go to the king and get him to do something about this. Except for in these days, you can't just walk into the king's palace and just talk to the king. You can't just walk in and be like, hey, so I heard about this. This needs to happen. Because if you walked in to the king and you were uninvited, the king could easily have you beheaded. He could just be like, nope, don't want to see you today, kill him. And so you would die. And so you had to be invited by the king. But Esther hadn't been invited by the king to come and see him for a long time. And so she was telling Mordecai, I can't just go to the king because I could die. And Mordecai told her, he goes, you're going to die anyway if this decree happens because you are a Jew. Don't think that just because you're in the king's court that you're going to be treated any differently. Either way, you're going to die. If you go before the king, you could die. But if this decree happens, you could still die. But maybe you were placed in the king's palace for such a time as this. What Mordecai was meaning is we don't know this for sure, but it was very possible that she was the only Jew among all the women that had been brought in from the kingdom. And he was telling her, maybe you have found such great favor with the king. Maybe you have been brought into his court so that you can make a difference in this time. Maybe all these things have lined up so that God could use you for such a time as this, where you needed to be here. And maybe your life hasn't made sense up to this point, but you're here now. And maybe it's for exactly this reason, to save all of the Jews. And so Esther took her cousin's words to heart, and she was like, okay, maybe I do need to do something about this. But before I do anything about this, fast and pray with me, that I won't be beheaded by the king when I go in. And so this fasting and praying is they wouldn't eat anything for a period of time, and they would pray that God would have favor upon them, that he would have his divine will upon them, and that what they were seeking for the Jews not to die would be heard.
Yeah, it's something that, also we do today. And God can hear us, and when we really want to get God's attention, and when we have a problem in front of us, or really seek the best way to address something, or how to move on in life, really reaching out to God, and with what is this constant prayer, it is powerful, and God hears those prayers. And what happens here is that after fasting and prayer, not only does God hear what we have to say and actually encourages us to do this, but it also can give us courage to do what is right in front of his eyes, in front of God's eyes. And so Esther, after the time of fasting and prayer, came to the king uninvited, which really was, breaking the rules. And at any moment, Esther could have died, but what the king did was he looked with favor to Esther. And essentially what he did was that he extended his scepter out, which meant, okay, you know what? Even though you're breaking the rules, it's totally okay. I actually, I'm glad that you're here. So, you don't have to worry about dying at the moment, which, was great because, Esther came and was placed there with a purpose by God. But Esther didn't necessarily came out and said, things are wrong, I'm a Jew and my people are going to die. Instead, she decides, you know what? Really, I have come in front of you because I want to make a banquet for you. So she says, come and I'm going to make a banquet with you, and also bring Haman. And that is where we're going to leave the story.
And so we'll see you next time talking about what happens at this banquet.